Have you ever felt like your own energy, your sense of control, just slips away? Like you're watching your life happen from the sidelines, powerless to steer it? Maybe it's exhaustion or that quiet voice that tells you, this isn't for you. Or the moments when saying no feels impossible. If you've ever felt that way, you're not alone. And today, I want to invite you into something different, a way back to yourself, back to your power. I'm going to share 5 signs that it's time to reclaim your personal power. Not in a flashy, grab the world kind of way, but in a gentle, fierce, deeply real way. Each one builds on the last, like stepping stones across a river. Miss one, and you risk losing your footing. So I invite you to lean in, take this journey step by step. There's no rush, no need to scroll ahead. This is your moment to breathe deeper, feel more present, and reclaim what's been quietly slipping away. And if you want to keep learning and growing with me, there's a subscribe button waiting to welcome you into this space of calm, truth, and transformation. Because here's the thing. So many of us live like power is something to take or prove. But real power, the kind that heals, that steadies you, starts quietly. It's about connection, boundaries, and owning your story without apology. In the next few minutes, I'll share with you 5 signs that show you're ready to take that power back. And believe me, one of these might surprise you or feel like the exact key you've been missing. So, stay with me. The deeper truths are coming. Sign 1. You notice your boundaries are blurred or missing altogether. Have you ever walked away from a conversation or a favor or a gathering and felt like you abandoned yourself? Not because it was dramatic, but because something inside you whispered, that wasn't a real yes. You smiled, you nodded, you showed up. But deep down, it felt like a quiet betrayal, not to them, to you. That's how it often begins, not with some major, obvious crisis, but with small, repeated moments where you override your own truth. You convince yourself it's not a big deal, that it's just easier to go along, to not make waves, that it's kinder to stretch yourself than to disappoint someone else. And before you know it, the line between you and everything outside you blurs. Your time becomes negotiable. Your peace becomes conditional. And your no starts to disappear entirely. But here's the part most people miss. Boundaries aren't just about protecting yourself from others. They're about remembering where you begin and end. They're about honoring your own internal enough. Enough time, enough energy, enough emotional capacity, enough of trying to be everything for everyone, while losing yourself in the process. Let me ask you gently, when was the last time you disappointed someone else to stay true to yourself? Because there was a time I couldn't. I bent and bent and bent, thinking it made me strong, thinking it made me lovable, until the weight of all those quiet compromises started crushing the version of me I was trying so hard to hold on to. And then came the shift. Not overnight, but slow and uncomfortable. It began with one small no, not rude, not loud, just honest. Then another and another. Each time I felt the trembling in my chest, that fear of being misunderstood, rejected, labeled selfish. But I also felt something else, relief, peace, a return. Because every time I honored my boundaries, I reclaimed a piece of my power. Not power over anyone, but power with myself. So here's something to sit with. What if saying no was the most loving thing you could do? Not just for you, but for them too? Because when you show up whole, not resentful, when you give from a place of truth, not guilt, that's when your presence becomes real, nourishing, unshakable. Maybe it's time to stop stretching yourself thin in the name of love. Maybe love, real love, includes you too. And that's just the beginning. Because the next truth, it taught me something I never expected about strength. And it begins where most of us feel the weakest. Sign 2. You find yourself people-pleasing. Losing sight of your own desires. Have you ever felt like you're performing, even in your closest relationships? Not acting in a dramatic way, but subtly shaping yourself to be more agreeable, more likable, more acceptable. You laugh when something doesn't feel funny. You nod when your heart wants to challenge. You hold back your truth because the silence feels safer than the risk of not being understood. And little by little, you become a version of yourself designed to be loved. Instead of being yourself and letting love meet you there, there's a soft but persistent voice behind all of it. It says, if I make them happy, I'll be safe. If I make them proud, I'll be enough. But here's the honest truth. That voice doesn't protect you. It binds you. Because if your worth is always tied to how well you please others, you'll spend your life chasing approval that was never yours to begin with. I remember a time I dimmed parts of myself just to keep the peace. Dreams I shelved so I wouldn't intimidate. Opinions I softened until they barely sounded like me. All in the name of harmony. But the cost? I was slowly vanishing, not all at once, but in fragments, until I couldn't even tell what I wanted anymore. People-pleasing can look so gentle on the outside, but inside it's exhausting because you're constantly monitoring, editing, adapting, and hoping it'll be enough. But what if your real power, your deepest, quietest strength, comes when you stop performing? When you speak, even if your voice trembles. When you share your desires, even if they disappoint someone. When you let yourself be seen, without the mask, without the edit. That's when true connection begins. Not when you're agreeable, but when you're authentic. Yes, some people may step away when you stop people-pleasing, but hear me, the ones who stay, they're not staying for the performance, they're staying for you. And isn't that what you've always wanted? So take a breath. You don't need to shrink to be loved. You don't need to bend your desires to belong. You don't have to earn your place through self-abandonment. You are already enough without the performance, without the pleasing, without the pretending. And here's the part most people avoid, but it's where the real power begins. The moment you stop seeking permission to exist fully and start giving yourself the freedom to take up space, because your desires matter, your voice matters, you matter exactly as you are. And the next truth, it's something we rarely admit, but it's quietly running so many of our lives. Stay with me. You'll see what I mean. Sign 3. You feel disconnected from your own needs and emotions. You get things done. You check the boxes. You smile when you're supposed to, nod when it's expected, push through when you're tired. But somewhere in all of that, you stop feeling. You stop checking in. You stop asking the most important question, how am I really doing? It's not always dramatic. Sometimes it's subtle, like forgetting the last time you rested without guilt, or brushing off your emotions with a quiet, I'll deal with it later. That never comes. And over time, that quiet disconnection grows. You stop hearing the messages your body's trying to send. You silence the ache in your chest, the tightness in your throat, the fatigue in your bones. You tell yourself, I'm fine. I'm just tired. This isn't the time to fall apart. But here's the thing, When you disconnect from your needs and emotions, you disconnect from your power. Because your emotions, they're not weaknesses. They're messengers. They tell you where something's not right. They reveal what you crave, what you fear, what you long for. They are how your soul speaks through your body. I remember a season in my life when I completely ignored the signs, the tension headaches, the constant fatigue, the quiet sadness that followed me like a shadow. I told myself, I'm just busy, but deep down I was running from myself. Until one day my body said, enough. It forced me to stop, to rest, to feel everything I'd been avoiding. And I won't lie, it was painful, but it was also the beginning of something real. For the first time in years, I sat with myself, not to fix, not to judge, but to listen. What did I need? What was I feeling? Where was I abandoning myself in the name of being strong? It changed everything. Sometimes we think reclaiming our power means doing more, but often it means feeling more. It means learning to trust the signals you've been taught to ignore. The knot in your stomach, the tightness in your chest, the longing you've been bearing under obligations. It's not selfish to tend to your needs. It's not dramatic to honor your emotions. It's wise, it's sacred, and it's how you find your way back to yourself. So let me ask you gently, when was the last time you checked in? Not out of discipline, but out of love. Take a breath, slow down, and listen, not to the noise of the world, but to the quiet wisdom within you. Because your needs matter, your feelings are valid, and your power, it's been waiting, right there, underneath the numbness. Stick with me, because the fourth truth will make this all click, in a way that might shift how you see your entire journey. Sign 4, you avoid conflict even when it costs you your peace. It's tempting to sidestep discomfort, to keep the peace at all costs. But when you do, you sacrifice your power by silencing your truth. Let's be honest. Conflict is uncomfortable. It brings tension. It brings unpredictability. It brings the risk of being misunderstood or rejected. So many of us learn early on to become peacemakers. We smooth things over. We swallow our opinions. We convince ourselves it's not a big deal. I'll let it go. But here's the truth no one tells us. Avoiding conflict might protect the moment, but it erodes your peace in the long run. Because every time you silence yourself to keep the peace, you declare silently that your truth matters less. Have you ever walked away from a conversation knowing you weren't honest? Not because you lied, but because you held back. Because you chose comfort over clarity? It happens slowly. You let little things slide. You let people overstep your boundaries. You laugh when you're actually hurting. You say it's fine when it absolutely is not. And inside, it builds. Not just resentment, but a quiet kind of grief. Grief for the version of you that had something to say and didn't. Grief for the you who just wanted to be heard. I remember a time I avoided a difficult conversation for weeks. I told myself, it's not worth the drama. But what I didn't realize was, the silence was the drama. I couldn't sleep. I played out the conversation in my head 100 times. And beneath the anxiety was something deeper, a feeling that I had abandoned myself. Eventually I spoke. And no, it wasn't perfect. My voice shook. The other person didn't fully understand. But something powerful happened. I showed up for myself. I honored my truth. I stood in it, not with anger, not with blame, but with grounded clarity. And in doing that, I reclaimed something I didn't even know I'd lost: my self-respect. See, conflict isn't the enemy. Avoidance is. When you learn to face discomfort, not recklessly, but with self-respect, you begin to see that protecting your peace doesn't always mean avoiding tension. Sometimes it means moving through it with honesty, with kindness, with courage. What would shift in your life if you stopped avoiding the hard conversations? What would open up if you trusted yourself enough to speak even when your voice trembled? Let me offer this. You can be kind and clear. You can be loving and direct. You can protect your peace and speak your truth. And that last truth, the one we're about to explore, it's the thread that weaves all of this together. It's not just the key to reclaiming your power, it's the way back home to yourself. Sign 5. You believe power is something outside of you, waiting to be given. This is the biggest illusion. We look for power in jobs, titles, relationships, or validation. But real power is already inside. It's not about control over others, but control over your own life, your own mind. It might be the most important because it's the root of everything we've talked about. So many of us grow up believing that power is something we have to earn, that it comes from achievement, from recognition, from someone else saying, "You're worthy now." We chase it through titles, through relationships, through how many people like us, applaud us, choose us. We wait for a moment, a promotion, a breakthrough, a compliment, to finally feel powerful. But the truth, real power has nothing to do with those things. It doesn't come from outside. It's not something given. It's something remembered. Real power is presence. It's alignment. It's that quiet strength that comes from knowing who you are and standing in it. It doesn't shout. It doesn't perform. It simply is. But here's where it gets hard. To truly reclaim your power, you have to stop waiting for permission. You have to stop believing that someone else holds the key to your worth. Let that sink in, because I know how easy it is to forget. I did. For a long time, I gave my power away to other people's opinions. I let rejection define me. I let success validate me. I let failure undo me. Until one day, in the middle of burnout and emotional fog, I realized something that changed my life. No one was coming to hand me my power. I had to step into it, scared, imperfect, unsure, but willing. That moment wasn't loud. It wasn't grand. It was quiet, almost invisible to the outside world. But internally, it was a revolution. I started choosing myself, not in a selfish way, but in a sacred way. I started listening to my inner knowing. I started trusting my own voice more than the noise around me. And slowly, piece by piece, I began to feel whole again. So let me ask you, where have you been waiting for someone else to crown you worthy? Where have you made your power conditional? Because the real you, underneath the fears, the doubts, the old stories, has always been powerful. You don't need to become someone else. You just need to come home to who you've always been. And that journey, that homecoming, it begins with one decision: to stop reaching outward and start reaching inward. This is your reminder. Your power was never lost. It's been waiting for you to remember. Let's anchor that in now. As we gently close, if any of this is landing with you, I invite you to subscribe. This space is for the seekers, the healers, the ones ready to come home to themselves. There's more to explore here. Tools, stories, and reflections to help you reconnect with what truly matters. So let's breathe this all in again. You're reclaiming your power when you protect your boundaries, when you stop people-pleasing and start honoring your desires, when you reconnect with your needs and emotions, when you face conflict with courage instead of avoidance, and when you realize power has been inside you all along. You're not alone in this journey. It's a slow, sacred unfolding. Thank you for allowing me to walk alongside you today. Take your time, reflect, and when you're ready, step back into your power, the one that's been waiting for you, quietly all along. Until next time, be gentle with yourself, and remember, you are more powerful than you know.